To help us make sense of this latest maritime encounter with China, joining us tonight is One News Defense Editor Manny Mogato. Manny, thank you for coming back.
Yes.
Ang dami nang nagbago, no, since last ka nandito.
Yes, I think the incidents in the South China Sea or in the West Philippine Sea has been escalating. This time it's the worst, no? And this is a direct assault on a military vessel, no? Yung RFIB, no? Yung rubber boat natin. And I think the authorities should already consider invoking the Mutual Defense Treaty. No?
And that's how it works, di ba? Tayo dapat ang magsimula ng talks to invoke it. Hindi naman siya matic na bigla na lang dahil may nagyari, matic na.
Hindi.
Nagka-come into play ito. But then it has to go through the U.S. Congress.
Yes. But this is a political decision to be made by the President. And the recommendations should come from Defense Secretary Teodoro, National Security Advisor Año, and Foreign Affairs Secretary Enrique Manalo. So these three people should meet together and discuss the options for the Philippines, responses, because this is already a serious incident. No, some soldiers were hurt, and our vessel, an a rubber boat, was damaged. It was punctured by the Chinese Coast Guard. So it needs a stronger response from the Philippines. And I think that's why there is no statement yet from the armed forces, because they're waiting for the political leadership, no? Defense Secretary Teodoro to make a statement. He had a statement yesterday, but it was just condemning the Chinese actions. But whether he will ask the U.S. to help by invoking the MDT, that remains to be seen.
Let's talk about those statements, Manny. There were a lot of statements yesterday, pero ang similarity between them is they didn't really say much. Again, nauna yung China to release details, at least their version of details about what happened. Sumunod na lang, no, kumbaga in response, sumagot tayo. Ano na ba nangyari sa ating transparency initiative? Because
Right. Okay, is it odd too that in this most severe incident, there's not much documentation, not as not as unlike before na may mga videos that we would actually see what happened in this.
Or is it because na medyo mas grabe na nga yung nagyari, kaya wala pa tayong mga agad-agarang mga statement, agad-agarang mga
being very
videos?
cautious too.
I think one thing is I cannot understand is why the Coast Guard has been left out. No, because normally,
Usually,
when
yeah.
you have a resupply mission,
They accompany
the
the boat.
Philippine supply boat, no, sa civilian boat, is being escorted by the Philippine Coast Guard. In this case, we don't see any Coast Guard vessel.
That's true.
And the Navy was using rubber boats.
Rubber boat.
So,
Ayun na nga yung sinabi ni
Maybe-
Jay Tariela, di ba,
Yeah.
Sir Mogs, na ang sinabi niya ay, hindi ako makakapag-comment dahil this is exclusively an AFP mission.
yes, it's a Navy mission, and it could be a special operations mission, no? Because the Philippine military is experimenting on ways to reach BRP Sierra Madre to deliver food and water. Because before this incident, we have seen that the Air Force and the Navy were dropping supplies.
Right. We know what happened there. China again beat us to
yes.
releasing the videos. Diba,
Yeah.
naghabulan. Ayan na, nakikita natin sa
Yeah.
telebisyon.
But this operation last June 17 was very much different, because the Navy was coming from all over. And I don't know. I really don't know why the Coast Guard was left out. So there must be something there that we don't know. That's why the military cannot just make a statement because they're waiting for the political leadership, from Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro to make a statement on what really happened.
Okay, well,
in
you
that
also heard
operation.
the soundbite from former Defense Secretary Orly Mercado when he says red zone na to, hindi na to gray zone. are we really in the red zone now? Or can this still be considered as part of gray zone tactics?
Well, the actions taken by the Chinese Coast Guard was part of their gray zone tactics. On the other hand, we don't really have that gray zone tactics, except that we were delivering supplies to Sierra Madre through a civilian boat, which is actually a Philippine Navy commissioned vessel, because the people inside the wooden boat are all Marines and Philippine Navy personnel. No? So it's not necessarily a civilian vessel. No? So everything that's being done are being coordinated by the Philippine Navy, especially the people from Westcom, Western Command in Palawan. So I think that's our own gray zone tactic.
On that note, hindi ba just very recently, last week, China has this new law that they can actually, they
Arrest
instructed their
trespassers.
Coast Guard to seize foreign ships that would enter their waters, their territorial waters. Hindi ba, Manny, sa tingin mo, this could be like us testing the waters with this
Well,
incident?
yes, maybe.
This could be like, okay, let's see how they implement this, or let's see if, what
Yes,
goes out of this.
it's one way of testing it, but as you will remember, many fishermen from Zambales have stopped going to Baho de Masinloc because they were afraid that the Chinese Coast Guard will arrest them. China has no basis, legal basis, to impose that domestic law.
Right.
Because number one, the area that we are operating is covered by our maritime zones under the 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone. So we have jurisdiction over that waters. And China's territorial claim is unrecognized by the international community.
With
In fact,
Philippines, Taiwan,
everything,
Malaysia,
everybody.
yeah.
In fact, the UNCLOS, in its arbitral ruling in 2016, has repudiated that 10-dash line. Before, it was 9-dash line, so it's now 10-dash line.
Expanded to 10.
But it's not acceptable. So, I don't know why China is still insisting on that 10-dash line when no one recognizes it. Well, we have our own EEZ, which is recognized under the international law. So we have jurisdiction over that area.
All right, let's bring it back to last weekend. So before this incident happened, which was supposedly on June 17, which is Monday, the Coast Guard law, the Chinese Coast Guard law, took effect on Saturday.
15,
nagkaroon din ng G7 summit, where at the end of it all, the leaders kind of released a
Statement.
Yeah. Decrying China's actions in the. You think reaction din ito, maybe a message to the G7 leaders?
Well, kasama na dyan because the Chinese rejected that statement and condemned the G7 leaders for issuing statement that they describe as full of lies. No? But it shows that the world, especially the Europeans and the G7, support the Philippine position on the West Philippine Sea.
Okay, Manda, let's bring it back to incidents in the West Philippine Sea and, of course, the disruptions. That's the chosen word from yesterday's statements by the AFP. May karon daw ng disruption doon sa Rore mission natin, which, as other reports came out today, medyo mas grabe naman pala than a disruption. Can we say that it was just a disruption or was it a failure since hindi sila umabot sa BRP Sierra Madre?
It's not only a disruption. No? It's an aborted operation. They did not push through with the resupply mission. And as I was saying earlier, this is a direct assault on our military. No?
Right.
Especially when they boarded the rubber boats, punctured, confiscated weapons, and towed the rubber boat. This is unacceptable.
However, I'm just gonna bring this back to December. I think this was around middle of December last year. So around 6
December
months ago.
10.
December, yes.
Yeah.
Nung panahong yun, no, medyo nakita na yata ni Admiral Carlos, which is siya yung dating Westcom commander na natanggal na sa nawawala right
Yes.
now. I don't know where he is, right? Supposedly he's on leave. That's
Yeah.
the official word. He did warn about this exact kind of escalation. He had an interview with CNN Philippines where he said, ang susunod na sa water cannon ay after water cannon, probably ramming and attempts to board, which he said they will not allow. Back then, PCG pa no, yung nagmamahala, tsaka yung mga
Yes.
UNIZA-ME,
Yes.
diba, sa ating mga RORE missions. And then, we've seen na everything that has happened and nawala na nga sa Westcom si Admiral Carlos. So you can't really say that we didn't see this coming.
Yeah, actually, the former Indo-Pacific commander, si John Aquilino, Admiral John Aquilino, was already wondering what will be the next step by China, because it's really escalating, no? So there would come a time that there would be accidents, and that could happen there by, I don't know, but it could lead to a armed confrontation between the Philippines, China, and probably the U.S.
So much worse than losing a finger.
Maybe. We don't know. Because the Chinese are very aggressive, and the moves they're taking are more dangerous, increasingly dangerous, especially when they are trying to stop the resupply mission.
Manny, I think the big question here is where do we go from here? How do we continue to protect our military personnel? And as you mentioned, things have been getting worse. So can we expect things to get even more worse before it gets better? And as you mentioned, you believe it's time to invoke the Mutual Treaty of Defense. So
Yes, but invoking the treaty does not mean going to war.
Yeah.
No, the U.S. has many options in helping the Philippines. Probably one is to escort the Philippine supply boats. No, if you have a U.S. destroyer sailing along with these supply boats, that could scare away the Chinese Coast Guard. And because, in the U.S. Congress, there had been debates already whether the U.S. can send patrols and escort Philippine boats to supply mission to prevent the harassment. Because they are also worried that there would come a time that some soldiers, Philippine soldiers, might get killed.
Okay.
And this would invoke the Mutual Defense Treaty.
Right, but let's piece that together, because earlier today, Senator Francis Tolentino also issued a statement, and he said maybe we should consider asking the Red Cross. On the other hand, what you're saying is that we can use the Mutual Defense Treaty to maybe request for increased U.S. patrols in the
Yeah.
disputed waters, diba? And that would be good for everyone. But will China view increased U.S. patrols in the South China Sea as increased provocation also?
Of course.
Of course. So in that case, would it be better then to maybe take the advice of Senator Tolentino and maybe call someone like the Red Cross to help escort or
Well, it's
resupply
also an option, but I don't think China will respect the Red Cross. They did not even respect the UNCLOS. Why would they respect the Red Cross?
But
And-
what about so if in case if we go the U.S. route and they do send some big
Well,
boats to escort us?
China will not risk a bigger confrontation if they attempt to maybe stop a U.S. Navy ship, because as you've been seeing, way many years ago, the U.S. has been conducting the PONOPS, the Freedom of Navigation Patrol, and they always sail sometimes very close to the Chinese territory, about 12 nautical miles in the artificial islands. And China was not doing anything. They just monitor the ship passing. So if the U.S. Navy will sail with an Aegis destroyer, maybe that would stop China from interfering.
Okay. What about the timing, Manny? As we know, Joe Biden's term is nearing an end. nasa tail end na tayo eh. Do you think this has anything to do with that also? Kung baga, sobrang daming confluence of events. The things we have talked about, could it also be Biden going out and a possible Republican win again?
Or his health, for that matter.
Yeah, it's whether Biden stays in office or Trump returns, I think the U.S. policy will remain the same. Because before Biden came into office in 2016, when Trump was elected, he was anti-China. In fact, he has been providing the Philippines with modern equipment. In the past, under Barack Obama, we're getting second-hand weapons, second-hand planes, second-hand ships from the Americans. But when Trump came into office, he gave us brand new drones. No? And we were able to acquire brand new C-130s, the C-130J. No? So I think there will be no change in the U.S. policy because the U.S. considers China as a competitor now, unlike maybe 10 years ago.
Correct. Okay, so it's a battle between hegemons, right, and hegemony. Okay, but yes, last night we had Andy Mock here. Andy Mock is a senior research fellow at the Center for China and Globalization. He told us that the Philippines is leaning on a crumbling wall by depending on the United States. Of course, I guess that alludes to the fact na pababa na yung China, ay pababa na si US, paakyat pa lang si China in terms of hegemony, I suppose, right? So
Well,
what are your thoughts
I
on
will
that?
not be surprised because this Chinese geopolitical expert is towing the Chinese line. But if you compare the Chinese military and the U.S. military, they are miles apart. How many aircraft carrier has China has? I think only 2, and one is still being constructed. The U.S. has 11. No? The Chinese military is basically untested. They have not been to many wars, unlike the Americans. They were in Iraq, Afghanistan, well, everywhere. No? They were doing these battles with so many people, no? Including in Southern Europe before. So, I think the Americans have more experience, more battle-tested than the Chinese. And we don't know how accurate or how effective are the Chinese missiles. No? In fact, in April, the U.S. deployed its brand new intermediate missile, the Typhoon, in northern Luzon. It scared China. They were worried that it could reach Shanghai or southern China. So they wanted the Americans and the Philippines to remove it. So these are, I think, what the Chinese are doing to escalate the situation is partly to pressure the Philippines to remove those weapons in the Philippines. So I don't buy that Chinese experts saying that
Opinion
the
that we're
Chinese
leaning on a crumbling wall.
leaning on a climbing wall because number one, China is having some economic problems. The economy is crumbling, their property sector is having troubles. So China and the US are also declining.
Yeah, they're both in decline,
Yeah.
economically speaking, right? So I guess we've run out of time, but it's so fun. We could just speculate. Not really fun. It's scary, actually, that we can speculate about this. But as you said, I guess we'll just have to wait for what the higher-ups decide.
Yes,
in
it's a
the
political
arena.
decision. Yeah.
And we'll just have to wait for that. Thank you again for joining us tonight. For
Thank
all
you.
your insights, as usual, One News Defense Editor, Manny Mogato.
Thank you.